Everything is conscious, even the space between you. You've been sold a story your entire life, that your consciousness, the very feeling of being you, is cooked up inside the soft, 3-pound machine in your skull. We see cool brain scans with regions lighting up, and we just assume, yep, that's the whole picture. The brain makes the mind. It feels simple, logical, and scientific. But what if that's not just wrong, but completely backwards? What if your consciousness isn't in your head at all, but is a fundamental property of the universe itself, like gravity or time? What if being alive isn't some rare biological accident, but a wave in an ocean of awareness that touches literally everything? This is the story of panpsychism, a philosophical idea once dismissed, that's now roaring back to challenge our deepest assumptions about reality. It's an idea that might just be the key to solving the single biggest mystery in all of science. Section 1. The Great Unanswered Question. To get why a theory this wild is being taken seriously, you have to appreciate just how massive the problem is that it's trying to solve. For all our incredible scientific progress, one mystery stands apart. It's not out in the cosmos, but right behind your eyes. The philosopher David Chalmers famously gave it a name: the hard problem of consciousness. The easy problems, which are actually still ridiculously complex, are questions about mechanics. They're about figuring out how the brain processes information, focuses attention, or controls behavior. A neuroscientist can point to a web of firing neurons and say, "That's how you recognized your friend's face," or "That's the process for pulling your hand from a hot stove." Science can explain the function, but it can't explain the feeling. The hard problem is this: why does all that physical processing feel like anything from the inside? Why do you have this rich inner movie playing in your head, full of sights, sounds, feelings, and the undeniable sense of being you? Philosophers call these subjective qualities qualia. How can a bunch of mindless, unfeeling particles, the atoms that make up your brain, somehow get together and create the joy of hearing a favorite song, the sting of regret, or the simple experience of seeing the color red? This is the showstopper. There's nothing in our current physics, chemistry, or biology that says a specific arrangement of matter should suddenly spark into subjective awareness. It's a total break in the scientific story of the world. Trying to get consciousness from non-conscious stuff is like trying to get a number by adding up a pile of letters. It's a category mistake. The mainstream view, physicalism, which says everything is ultimately physical, has no real answer here. It basically just says it happens, and that's not an explanation. It's waving a white flag. For centuries, science has been building this beautiful model of reality, but it has a giant hole in the middle. It describes the outside of everything but the inside of anything. And that's where our story takes a sharp turn, back to an idea so ancient it was considered by the Greeks, and so strange it was ignored for a century, only to be championed today by a new wave of scientists and philosophers. Section 2. The Forgotten Clue. The idea is called panpsychism, and it offers a stunningly simple yet reality-bending solution to the hard problem. Panpsychism says that consciousness didn't just pop into existence in complicated brains. Instead, it's been here all along. The theory suggests consciousness is a fundamental, widespread feature of the physical world. It's not that rocks are thinking deep thoughts or electrons are having anxiety attacks. It's more that a very basic, primitive kind of experience is the intrinsic nature of matter itself. This isn't some fringe fantasy. It's being seriously discussed by top thinkers like philosophers Philip Goff, Galen Strawson, and David Chalmers. Even the neuroscientist Christoph Koch, a leader in brain science, is a major explorer of these ideas. They argue that panpsychism isn't anti-science, it's the completion of science. To get their logic, you have to rewind to the scientific revolution. Thinkers like Galileo essentially split reality in two to make it measurable. On one side, they put the objective, quantitative stuff: size, shape, location, motion. That became the job of physics. On the other side, all the qualitative, subjective stuff: colors, sounds, smells, and consciousness itself. Science, they decided, would only deal with the first part. It was a brilliant move that led to centuries of progress, but it was a practical choice, not a discovery about reality. It kicked consciousness out of the scientific playground by definition. Panpsychism argues this was a huge mistake. The philosopher Bertrand Russell, and later Galen Strawson, pointed out that physics, for all its power, only describes the behavior of matter, what it does. It gives you the equations for an electron's mass and charge, but it never tells you what an electron is, in and of itself. This is called the intrinsic nature argument. Physics leaves a huge blank spot at the center of its own story. Panpsychism proposes to fill that blank spot with consciousness. What if the intrinsic nature of matter, the very stuff our equations are describing, is experience? From this view, science isn't wrong. It's just half the story. It's an abstract description of the flow of consciousness. The universe isn't a bunch of dead stuff that magically wakes up. The universe is made of consciousness, and physics describes its outer behavior. Section 3. A new reality. If that's true, the implications are just staggering. It totally reframes our place in the cosmos. The world is no longer a cold, empty place that accidentally sprouted a few conscious creatures on one tiny planet. Instead, the entire universe is buzzing with experience. This view suggests that the fundamental particles making up your body and the world have a flicker of incredibly simple experience. They don't have thoughts, but there is something it is like to be an electron. As these particles combine into more complex systems, atoms, molecules, cells, and eventually brains, their simple conscious fields also combine, creating the rich, unified awareness that you and I know. This brings us to the title of our video. The space between you isn't empty. In some versions of panpsychism, consciousness isn't even tied to particles, but exists as a continuous field that permeates all of reality. Our individual minds are just localized ripples in this universal ocean. Awareness is everywhere. Of course, this idea immediately runs into a massive hurdle, what philosophers call the combination problem. It's the biggest challenge for panpsychism. If a single quark has a tiny bit of proto-consciousness, how do trillions of them combine to create your single, unified consciousness, and not just a chaotic jumble of disconnected feelings? Proponents are working on it. Some, called constitutive panpsychists, believe that just like atoms make up a molecule, micro-experiences literally build our macro-experience. Others suggest cosmopsychism, an even wilder idea where the entire universe itself is one single conscious being. Our individual minds aren't built from the bottom up. We are fragments of this cosmic mind, partitioned off from the whole. We aren't separate minds combining, but a single cosmic mind dividing. While the combination problem is a real challenge, its supporters argue it's no bigger a mystery than materialism's emergence problem, explaining how consciousness comes from nothing. At least panpsychism starts with the right ingredient. Section 4. The scientific frontier. While this all sounds very philosophical, it's starting to connect with actual science. You can't just build a consciousness detector to check if a rock is aware, but you can see how well the theory fits with what we already know. One of the most fascinating links is with integrated information theory, or IIT, developed by neuroscientist Giulio Tononi. IIT proposes that consciousness is identical to a system's level of integrated information, a mathematical value called phi. Simply put, a system is conscious if it's full of information and highly interconnected. It's more than the sum of its parts. Because pretty much any system has at least some integrated information, IIT implies a form of panpsychism. If even a simple system has a tiny bit of phi, it has a tiny flicker of experience. Now, IIT is highly controversial and has faced serious criticism, but its prominence shows these ideas are being explored at the highest levels of neuroscience. Panpsychism also fits surprisingly well with evolution. Instead of consciousness being a sudden, bizarre arrival on the scene, it would be something that was there in a simple form from the very beginning, just evolving in complexity right alongside physical bodies. Conclusion: we started with a question: where are you? The standard answer, that you're a ghost in a machine or a clever illusion, leaves a huge, gaping hole in our understanding of reality. Panpsychism offers a radical alternative. Consciousness isn't a glitch in the matrix. It is the matrix. This idea is far from settled, and the debates are fierce. But it's gaining ground because it addresses a deep dissatisfaction with a purely materialistic worldview, one that struggles to explain the most obvious fact of our lives, our own experience. If your mind is spinning with these questions and you love exploring the wild frontiers of science and philosophy, that's exactly what we do here. So consider subscribing. The ultimate takeaway from panpsychism is a profound shift in how you see everything. It suggests you're not an isolated bubble of awareness floating in a dead universe. You're part of a vast, interconnected web of experience. The very stuff that makes up stars and stones is the same stuff that dreams and feels. If panpsychism is right, you're not a conscious being living in the universe. You are the universe becoming conscious of itself, and that changes everything.